Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our series for this year of 2025 of Ramadan Reflections, our 11th year in producing this series of discussions. The soul's path home, divine wisdom on death and beyond, is what we're looking at this year, where we continue to reflect on the stages of death from the perspective of the Quran and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. May God's peace and blessings be upon all of them. Now, in today's episode, we will conclude the theme of the funeral and the burial. We also must remind ourselves that we are approaching the Nights of Qadr, and this means that we need to put more focus into our worship, more focus into our fasting, more focus into seeking of knowledge to make the most of these nights that are coming up that are better than 1,000 months. Now, moving on to our discussion for today, you'll recall that yesterday we paused at a particular juncture of the burial. Today I want to continue from where we left off and conclude our words on the process of the burial. And as we'll see today, there's a unique process which is followed as the body is being brought to the grave. Now, a couple of points I want to mention, things that we should consider, which are recommendations from Ayatullah Seestani in his Islamic Laws Manual. He says that when we look at the body of the deceased, one of the things we should all say is, indeed we belong to Allah, and indeed to Him we will return. Allah is the greatest. This is what Allah and His Messenger promised us, and Allah and His Messenger spoke the truth. O Allah, increase us in faith and submission. Praise be to Allah who is mighty in power, and who subdues His servants with death. In fact, even when the people are carrying the body, we should be lifting the body and saying the following words: in the name of Allah and by Allah, and may Allah's blessings be upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. O Allah, forgive the believing men and the believing women. The person attending this funeral should be in a humble, contemplative state and take a lesson from seeing the body. We need to imagine that we ourselves are in the place of that deceased, as if we have lost our lives and we are being carried, but then we realize that no, we have been given another chance of life. But that time should be spent in thinking about our own hereafter. The bereaved family members, we're told, should walk barefoot or change their appearance in a way that shows that they are the ones in mourning. They should stand out in that crowd. Now let me mention very quickly some of the things which are disliked, which are makruh, to be done during the funeral procession. Unfortunately, many of these are seen in our local community burials, and so this is something that we need to try and alter. One thing we have to try and stop is the people attending the funeral. They need to stop laughing or engaging in any activity considered as idle play. The people attending need to stop speaking about matters other than the remembrance of Allah. We need to supplicate, seek forgiveness, and do similar acts. It's even reported in the hadith that one should not even greet, one should not even say salam to a person attending a funeral procession. We're told that the people attending should not strike their thighs or the back of their hand as a symbol of grief. We're also told that when a person attending says, have mercy on the deceased, seek forgiveness for him, be gentle with him, that this is a recommendation. We're also told that the person going to the funeral should not ride in a vehicle unless there's an excuse. Obviously, we don't live in a place where the graveyard and the masjid are nearby. But obviously, these are all things that we should try and avoid. We've also been told that it's not good to walk in front of the casket. Walk with it or behind it. We also shouldn't carry the body too quickly or hastily, as if we want to get over this process. No. Now let me move on from there and go on to the process of placing the deceased in the grave. There are many rules, regulations to follow. I'm not going to mention any of them right now because that would detract me from the discussion for today. However, we do know that the deceased is placed in the grave on the right side with the face oriented towards the Qiblah, the direction of Mecca. This positioning really symbolizes the believer's eternal orientation towards Allah. The coffin is moved slowly toward the grave, pausing 3 times, putting the body on the ground before moving into the grave, before that final placement. And this ritual reminds the participants of the journey from this world to the next, as well as preparing the soul gradually and gently to see its body go into the ground, never to see the light of the day again until the resurrection. Now, after placing the body in the ground, the ties at both ends of the coffin of the shroud are unfastened. Some earth is placed under the cheek of the deceased, and an earthen pillow is created to slightly elevate the head. It's at this point, brothers and sisters, that the Talqeen, that final instruction, is recited, reminding the deceased of their faith and preparing them for the questioning in the grave, and preparing those who are listening on. The Talqeen is a significant ritual which, although is not an obligation, is mustahab, it's recommended. It holds profound importance for both the deceased and the living participants in the funeral proceedings. This practice involves reciting key Islamic beliefs and teachings to the departed soul after it is in the ground, but before the actual burial, serving as a final spiritual guidance, reminder, and point of education. Now, for the deceased, the Talqeen is believed to provide crucial support during that soul's transition. It's thought to assist the departed in answering the questions posed by the angels Munkar and Nakir when they're in the grave. The recitation includes the affirmation of faith, reminders of the oneness of Allah, the prophethood of Muhammad, may Allah bless him and his family, the leadership of the Immaculate Imams, may God's peace and blessings be upon all of them, and much more. However, the significance of Talqeen extends beyond the deceased, as I said. It offers a powerful reminder to the living. As mourners gather to participate in the ritual, they're confronted with the reality of death and the importance of maintaining strong faith throughout life. Thus, the Talqeen serves as a poignant reminder of Islamic beliefs and the transient nature of worldly existence, encouraging reflection and spiritual renewal among the living. The recommendation is to recite the Talqeen twice, once in Arabic and once in the native language of the deceased, English, Gujarati, Urdu, Farsi, Kutchi, whatever it may be. And this underscores its dual purpose. The Arabic recitation maintains the ritual's traditional form and spiritual potency, while the translation ensures comprehension for both the departed soul and the living attendees. Now, this process and this practice makes the teachings more accessible and impactful for all present. In essence, what I'm saying is that Talqeen serves as a bridge between this world and the next, offering final guidance to the departed, and again a profound reminder to the living of their own mortality and the importance of steadfast faith. It embodies the Islamic principles of continuous spiritual education extending even beyond the threshold of death. As His Eminence Ayatullah Seestani offers some critical pieces of guidance in this regard, I felt it important to mention it here in our Ramadan reflections. First off, he states that the Talqeen should be performed at 3 instances. Once is at the time of death, before the person passes away or shortly thereafter. Number 2 is after placing the deceased in the grave. And number 3 is after filling the grave with dirt and the departure of everybody present, other than the family. Now, when he looks at that last instance, he mentions the following. He says that after those who have participated in the funeral procession have left the graveyard, it is then recommended for the guardian of the deceased, or somebody authorized by the guardian, to recite the Talqeen prayer over again. So they recite it again over the grave of the deceased, just as it was recited during the burial process. Ayatullah Seestani goes on to say it's recommended that during this last Talqeen, that the person reciting it should face the Qiblah, sit at the head of the grave, And they should bring their mouth so close to the ground, to the grave, hold the grave with both hands, and then recite the talqeen in a loud voice. It's narrated in a hadith that this talqeen recited after burial causes Nakir and Munkar, the questioning angels, not to ask the deceased the questions of the grave and to be lenient with the deceased. Now, once all of this is complete, the believers are encouraged to participate actively in covering the grave with dirt. It's recommended for each person to throw 3 handfuls of soil into the grave before it's filled completely. This act, brothers and sisters, symbolizes our collective responsibility to our fellow Muslims and our acceptance of the reality of death. However, once again, there are some very important, crucial jurisprudential points which we have to mention here before we move on. Again, Ayatullah Seestani, may Allah protect and preserve him and all of our scholars, mentions that the following actions are disliked, are considered makruh during the actual burial process of the deceased. The first thing he says is to suddenly place the deceased in the grave without lowering and raising the body 3 times as the body is transported from the funeral car or from the mosque or wherever the process of the Salat al-Mayyit was done to the actual grave. Because the grave has great terrors and many fears, and this act helps prepare the soul for the inevitable. Number 2, he says the relatives of the deceased should not throw soil onto the grave because this causes hardness of the heart. So direct family should not put dirt on the grave. Number 3, he says that it is not recommended for the father to enter the grave of his child, lest he becomes impatient and loses his rewards from Allah. Now for the conclusion of the burial, the simplicity of the grave and the burial process in Islam serves as a powerful reminder of the equality of all humans before Allah. It encourages reflection on our own mortality, as I've said time and time again, and the importance of preparing ourselves for the afterlife through righteous deeds and strong faith. As we participate in these funeral rites, we are reminded of our own inevitable journey and the importance of living a life in accordance with the Islamic principles. May Allah grant us the wisdom to learn from these moments and the strength to face our own mortality with faith and dignity. In our next episode, we're going to go on to the theme of the questioning of the angels, Munkar and Nakir. Until then, I leave you with the words of peace. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.